1. Spags, it feels like an eternity since I last drafted a Best Ball Mania team for $3 million, but we are going to right that ship today.
It's been a long Memorial Day weekend, but we are back on the clock here. In fact, going to be quite literally on the clock. Best Ball Mania IV, $3 million of first place. And Pete and I, of course, drafting once again. As Pete, you stream every team 100. You feel rusty after a weekend of not getting any drafts, unless you were dying for the Chow Chow.
I did do a couple chow chows. I think I did 2 fast chow chows over the weekend. So did scratch my itch. Although there was an auto drafter in my chow chow yesterday, who ended up with like 4 or 5 QBs and like brutally sniped me twice. So I ended up with a classic Peter, punt QB build, thanks to an auto drafter. But we're ready to get back in these Best Ball Mania streets.
You can tell, Pete, that it's like the start of like the best ball summer. Everybody really excited to come in. I'm sure you're seeing it too. The amount of comments you get, also the amount of comments you get of people going like, these running backs are pretty thin. I don't think there's any pathway for them to score any points. Some guy left a comment, like I think right before the stream, I only draft 3-6-6-3 teams. Love drafting all my early running backs. Like every summer, this is the case. I don't know how you've been doing it for more years than I have.
I think I just have a short memory. I just kind of like Men in Black myself after each year to convince myself that we're not just doing the same things over and over again.
Yeah, we are. It feels really repetitive, but it is a new one here. Pete, looks like we are in the room, so you could pull it up here. Pete is in the 9 spot. I'm in the 10 spot, so we will both be going right next to each other, which has been an unfortunate part of these head-to-head, Pete. We are really just going one after the other and unfortunately sniping each other, sometimes accidentally, perhaps sometimes not.
I don't think I've ever sniped you because I just draft the best possible team, and you get these little vendettas and think you get spite equity and snipe equity out of these picks.
I will say, I'll go on the record here because we do get some comments about it. I have never once purposely sniped Pete, at least in this run of BBM 4 entries, maybe last summer a little bit, but not currently. I've been trying to stay out of the way. Sometimes we both like the same teams, like the same players, and I think that's been our issue.
How many Best Ball Mania teams did you do over the weekend, and how many are you up to?
I actually didn't do any over the weekend, so I stayed pretty pure. I'm trying to kind of level it back because I'm at about 40 overall. Have been doing the Dalmatian slowly as that one peels through. Have a nice Tua Geno double stack going to that one, but yeah, honestly, I've been trying to measure myself out because you really can crank these. I had a guy Pete on Friday, 138 entries at BBM on the Splash Play Friday show, and it's like that's too many at this point. Even though I get the enthusiasm, why you just kind of want to blast off.
Yeah, I would love to talk to some, like if someone told me that they got 150 in like the first 4 days of the contest and they just went full sicko mode because they were like, the ADPs are off, this is my biggest edge. But I do question, like, I assume like what 60, 70 of those entries have been more recently. And I don't really know what the specific edge or reason is for blasting off that hard in a contest that's going to be open for 3.5, 4 months.
I think we can make the case that like your information gap knowledge, like yours and mine, I feel this way for myself, is probably the highest that it'll be right now. I guess you could say maybe in that training camp season where it's all the athletic articles, and I certainly love reading all of those. I know Pete does as well. There's a little bit of an information edge there, but I think right now I could see the logic in thinking that more than everybody else drafting in May. But I say that way, I see that for 50 entries, not for 150.
Right. Yeah, the thing is I feel like there's been enough contests. All right, Travis Kelce falling to pick 9. Sure. Looks like we're going to be in a piss boy room right here, though.
Yeah, Eckler is starting to come up a little bit in ADP now that his contract stuff's been sorted out with the Chargers, at least for 1 year. But I am going to take Devontae Adams here, who I never really have any issue with, even though Jimmy G's foot not looking great.
Yeah. See, at least Lauren here in the chat is honest. I'm at 94. It's just because I'm dumb and love this platform. That's a legitimately good reason. At least we're not like lying to ourselves and being like, this is how we get a big edge.
Yeah, and I'm actually going to take Jalen Waddle here too, just because, again, as Pete mentioned, it is a piss boy room, and Jonathan Taylor would make sense for the week 17 correlation, as well as to give myself some skin in the game for Anthony Richardson, but I prefer Waddle.
Mm-hmm. All right, we have a shit ton of wide receivers off the board. God, I have so much Olave. I'm actually, like, to me, I personally view Olave and Devonta Smith relatively similar. I guess you can make the case that there's a little bit more to target share upside for Olave, if he could command, the top dog in a way that Devonta Smith is probably never going to be able to fully usurp. AJ Brown, but I just all those guys, Waddle, Devonta Smith, um, T. Higgins, I view relatively similarly. So I'm just going to keep kind of mixing and matching there.
Yeah, I think it's a reasonable way to look at it. And I like Devonta Smith in general. I mean, I think too, anytime you get that wide receiver two in this range and they are kind of direct leverage on the guy going in the first round, I feel like that's pretty appealing. And also, Peter, reminder, I don't know what number entry this is for you, but if you want to get your banner going.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I actually need to. I'm pretty sure this is 30. Yeah.
Okay, so
So I'll
number
be
30 for you. Yeah.
a fifth of the way done after this one.
Wow. Does it feel like you're a fifth of the way done? Because I was thinking about it on Friday when I was doing my stream, and I would encourage people to check that out, of course, on the Splash Play channel. We have some fun there. I'm doing random stacks. The draft was only a month ago. Like, it really feels like we have been in this world post-draft for at least a 2-month cycle. And I feel like this time goes by so fast, but also it feels like you are in some sort of repetition loop that never ends.
Yeah, it is. It does feel like the content life cycle. What one way I was thinking about it is, every year by more towards like the middle to later part of the summer, I make my best ball bro video, spoofing all of the things that we all talk about all summer long. And normally I need like a couple months of best ball discourse and drafting occurring, and then I can build up my Rolodex of things to reference in that video. I feel like I could go make that video right now off of just 4 weeks of drafting. Like there's just so much already that has transpired in the best ball universe. So yes, things are moving. It's like AI, where it's like an exponential thing, like for rapid adoption. That's what best ball has done this summer. We've just gone like exponential here, and who knows what the end of the summer is going to look like.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see. And I guess we should talk about one item, Pete, because we haven't been doing the news segments because we do try to hop into the draft immediately. But DeAndre Hopkins finally gets that release. And I still feel like he's going to end up somewhere that is going to actually end up paying off this ADP that has been kind of untenable to me over the last few weeks. Or basically since, as Bindles points out, we've been drafted since February. I've been like, no DeAndre Hopkins for me this entire time. But if he goes to KC or Buffalo and he's still going in the 40s, like, it's probably an appropriate value, even though he is kind of dusty, even though all the metrics that would support him being an alpha dog receiver have started to come down to earth, even though he's contested catch guy and getting older. But where's the appropriate price for Hopkins if he goes anywhere good?
So my take on the Hopkins ADP all along was that it was baking in a good landing spot. Like where he was going was, in my mind, assuming a Bills, a Chiefs, a Chargers, whatever it was going to be. And so I don't think much has changed. The only times I was taking him were one when he slid about a round past ADP, and generally if it was correlated with an Eagles player. That would be kind of my one exception for taking DeAndre Hopkins. So I don't think his ADP should move up. I think it should just stay where it was, because I just assumed the market was already assuming that, because it was like, why were we drafting him there with the Cardinals, who are a dumpster fire, Kyler, who knows if he's going to play? Like that ADP never made sense for the Cardinals. So I assumed that everyone was already skating to where they thought the puck was going to be.
I guess that would make more sense. I've kind of thought it was just the boomer love for DeAndre. Like we have the Black Lebowski saying Hopkins is dusty in the chat. Like I think that's a common take of people that like him more. And Andrews goes, which I would have liked. So what are you going to pick?
I'm going Debo here. A guy that I don't end up with a ton, but man, we've talked about it a lot. This back end of the third round is pretty gross here. And I figured I'd have a couple shots at a quarterback or a running back if I wanted it. So just went ahead and grabbed the other kind of third round value at wide receiver.
Yeah, I would have taken Mark Andrews if he had fallen to me. Instead, I'm going to take Amari Cooper here. Pete, do you want to guess my Mark Andrews exposure? Because I was going through the numbers a little bit, and it's honestly higher than I would have anticipated.
Your Andrews exposure, higher than anticipated. I don't know. What are you at? 15%?
24% Mark Andrews so far.
Okay.
Well, because I love Miami Baltimore for week 17. I'm not always, but very frequently get one of Waddle or Tyreek Hill. So that's sort of forcing me there, but I definitely need to turn off the Mark Andrews a little bit just because he's an elite tight end, which is good, but that's the only elite tight end I'm getting a lot of besides, I guess, Kelsey whenever I'm in the first round and he kind of falls.
Well, and also what happens, right, is you're at this spot here, and you can see it on this board. You can feel this after Ramondre comes off, because you get these nice anchor running backs in the third. You get DK Metcalf. Sometimes there's a quarterback kicking around, and then you fall into the Ridley, Samuel, Amari, Lamar, Fields tier, and like Andrews looks like the best player once Ramondre's off the board. Pretty clearly, I would have been in a tough spot there if he came back. Just because I would not have wanted to go double elite tight end there, I don't think. So this is normally a spot where I'd be like, oh, I'll grab the Gibbs value here. And I still might. Wow, Judy, you took Judy. Maybe I will do the Gibbs value. At first, I was like, maybe I should keep drafting wide receivers, but I just do not like this range here. I do take Keenan a decent amount. You can see I have 17% Keenan there, but going to go ahead and grab a Gibbs share.
Yeah, I took Judy. Would have preferred to get Watson, but of course Watson goes right before me. This Rybert and Rickster both are taking guys that I like, which is obviously going to be expected here. But I'm liking the 0 RB build so far, just because these wide receiver pockets. Like, I have talked myself into Gibbs so many times in that exact same situation, and definitely more than Najee, definitely more than Etienne.
I was gonna say, the more I think about it, the more I think Etienne's like overvalued by like a round and a half, almost 2 rounds. Like he feels like he should be going where Miles Sanders is going, where you can tell yourself the story of how it breaks, but there are a lot of just dead zone running back concerns with him.
I mean, the thing that jumped out to me was how they didn't use him for the pass game last year, even though that's what he was so ballyhooed for coming out of college. And then they also used Tank Bigsby so far, and he's catching passes in camp, and it feels like he might get some more of that role. We also know last year they certainly liked Jermichael Hasty a little bit more in those pass game roles, as well as on third downs to protect. So it kind of feels like ATN's margin of success is getting thinner, even though, like, I get he's a good rusher and whatever, but even the advanced analytics don't support that enough where I'm like, oh, ATN's a value. If he goes to the 5th, like, I could see kind of going back there.
Yeah, I mean, you're really starting to. The thing that just sucks about Etienne is just that he doesn't catch passes, and it's not because he can't. I think we all agree that Travis Etienne is a very capable pass catcher. They just, for whatever reason, have decided not to use him. Now you bring in more pass catching competition in Calvin Ridley. You bring in Tank Bigsby, who's going to be a thorn in his side, and you really are hanging your hat on big plays. And again, he's fully capable of that, but you really are going to need him to rip off a lot of like 50-yard touchdowns to pay off a 3rd round ADP.
Yeah, I would agree. Also, interesting chat from Rodney here, Pete. I don't know how you want to handle this one, but Pete, describe your reaction to the Succession finale in 3 words or less. What would be your summary take that is still no spoiler zone here?
In 3 words or less.
Yeah.
Geez, this is quite the prompt, Rodney. Drink that milkshake. Is what I will say.
I would say Shiv annoys me would sum up a lot of this season for me, especially the finale.
Shiv is probably like the most hypocritical, right? Where it's like Kendall and Rome like kind of know who they are and they're unapologetic, where the entire thing with Shiv for the whole duration of the series is like she started out as like this bleeding heart lib that was going to, separate herself from kind of like the family, the cutthroat nature of the business and all of that. And she's kind of just waffled back and forth. And whenever it was convenient for her to be like, no, we care about democracy and the republic, then she plays that card. And then when it's like, oh, I can have the seat at the table, I could be the CEO, then she plays that card. And so in that way, I do feel like she is almost the most cynical of all of them.
I kind of liked her the most going in, so I think that did affect me. But Team Kendall guy and Team Kendall fans, we come in peace here. As hopefully you guys enjoyed the finale, and interesting capper to the show, Pete. And that's, I guess, all we could say for now for the people who are a few days behind, had a nice vacation. They're like, oh, I know it won't talk about Succession, my favorite best ball streamers, and here we are dancing around.
Normally talk about it a little bit on the Monday show, but no Monday show ever. Best show ever. I fucking love Succession, but I don't know if it's best show ever. It was really good though.
This is a falling Justin Herbert here, which goes against my piss boy room here, but I really don't want to reach for Evans, Lockett, Addison, Marquise Brown. I'm not a big Marquise Brown believer with the vacated targets. Just don't think there's going to be anybody who can get him the ball. So I'll take Herbert and try to build out a week 17 correlation with Denver.
I think I view it differently where I'm happy to grab Marquise Brown at ADP. He's not a guy I'm reaching for, but I do think, one, he's talented and should have all the volume in the world. And we've seen him as kind of a target guy. Like, I don't view Marquise Brown as just a downfield threat. I actually think he can earn targets as the number 1. And to me, it's kind of similar to what Brandon Cooks in years past, where it's like, yeah, no one feels like investing in the Texans offense or whatever and taking the best wide receiver on a bad team, but that still has value. Him earning targets at that clip.
I just took Kyle Pitts. So that's why if you saw me put my head in my hands, that's in fact the reason why. I do not want to take Kyle Pitts, but I take too much Goddard.
I have so much Mike Evans here, but because I have this little Seattle thing going with Jackson Smith and Jigba, I'm going to just kind of dance around the ADP board here and draft Diontae Johnson.
Interesting. I've been staunchly against Diontae Johnson over Pickens, and it's starting to get closer ADP wise. And I think that's the casual stuff coming in, because to me, Pickens fits all the criteria. Guy was playing outside and the slot, and outperforming, basically the average receiver in both those spots. And he's young and he's coming up. And I think Diontae Johnson is going to be quickly phased out of that. Not phased out, but like Pickens is the 1A to me. I don't think that Johnson's even the 1B. I think he's the number 2.
Oh man, yeah. First of all, I like both, but I view it completely differently. And they're going to be used so differently. Their skill sets are, they basically play a different position. George Pickens is going to be used down the field, high ADOT. He's going to have more bust weeks, but he's going to have more probably explosion weeks. Whereas to me, with the Steelers, you are making a bet on Kenny Pickett, and if Kenny Pickett hits, Diontae Johnson's hitting. George Pickens is hitting, Pat Freiermuth is hitting. All those guys are going to hit if Kenny Pickett takes the leap, and just their production is going to come in different ways. I do think it's pretty analogous to, say, the Chargers wide receivers pre-Quentin Johnston, but George Pickens is going to be Mike Williams and Diontae Johnson's going to be Keenan Allen. I think that's what you're looking at.
I just think that there was nothing in terms of the analytics that jump out with Johnson that make me think that he's as good of a player overall as Pickens, but that's something where I know the touchdown
at a high rate forever.
What was that?
Diontae Johnson has earned targets at a nice clip for his entire career.
But that's because, for a large portion of his career that there were, weaker guys out there with him. I mean, obviously, there was an overlap with him and Antonio Brown even. So he's been kind of the default target. I mean, I don't know. These are the guys I've fallen for in the past, Pete. So I tend to have kind of an extra quizzical eye towards him, because I think that these volume receivers where there's a better guy who comes in, they start to come back down to earth fast. And Johnson, negative. No, this is Dearness Johnson, who was also pretty bad. Diontae Johnson, negative 21% DVOA per reception, negative 0.09 EPA, which is pretty close to average, but still negative average. Whereas Pickens was one of the best guys in the league in terms of both, at least the EPA numbers, 0.38 EPA per target, 16% passing DVOA. So these are things that I look at as a deciding point. I know Pat's looking at success rate more. Pat Kerrane, of course, the PBM 3 winner. I think it's an important counterbalance, because it does show you hey, this guy's good. He's going to earn more, and then obviously be less productive per snap. But Diontae Johnson doesn't deserve to earn more because he wasn't productive with the snaps he was getting, basically.
The other thing about Diontae Johnson is his ADP is down here because he ran just historically poor on touchdowns relative to his volume last year. And had he even scored a couple more touchdowns, his ADP would probably push him more into the 5th round alongside the Godwin stuff there. So I love making a bet on touchdown regression, on Kenny Pickett being good. And like I said, it does not mean I'm out on George Pickens whatsoever. I like both of those guys a lot, and I want to continue making bets on the Steelers offense.
I think the argument you made that speaks the most to me is the Kenny Pickett bet being the main thing there. And if he's good, he's going to drive success for both guys. But I just think I would be surprised at the end of the year if Pickens is not ahead of Johnson firmly, both in terms of fantasy and the real life value. But that's why we play the games, Pete. Nobody's right this time of year.
Let's see here. Wide receivers coming off the board. We do have Jahmyr Gibbs. We'll do a little week 17 here with Brandon Cooks and Gibbs.
And Quentin Johnston goes very early in this room. He goes at 76, so I will not be able to get him to stack up with Justin Herbert here. So we are firmly in the fun time of year. I am going to take Zay Flowers to increase my Baltimore bet a little bit with Miami, but would have really liked to get Quentin Johnston 4 picks ahead of ADP.
Yeah, this is it. I think I'm maybe on a show with you, or maybe it was a Best Ball Breakfast where I did the same thing where I took the Herbert slide at ADP, but then if you miss out on Johnston, you're firmly in Gerald Everett, Josh Palmer, Joshua Kelly, gross backdoor stack territory. But I still like taking the value at quarterback when you get it.
Yeah, I mean, that tends to be why I do eschew the value at quarterback, which is why I'm trying to trick my brain into taking a Justin Herbert and trying to figure out a way to make it work. But I feel like if you miss Quentin Johnston and you have Herbert, it really is thin. But I will hopefully not get sniped on Everett and the illustrious Josh Palmer, who feels like he shouldn't even have a role at this point. On the clock, though, my heart, I think we all know what my heart says. Anthony Richardson on the board. Javonte Williams maybe makes a little more sense as my first running back off. I am going to go the running back route and take Javonte.
I can't. If you took a quarterback, it did take Deshaun Watson there to stack up with your.
Yeah,
you're right. What do I want to do here? I could get my first share of Anthony Richardson, but I've told the people that I refuse to do it until I get him at an ADP value. Let's see. Let's do Cortland Sutton here. This is a gross range of the board. Yeah, I could have reached for Dak. I have a lot of quarterback outs later with Denver, Pittsburgh, Seattle, San Francisco. So decided to push it there at quarterback. And just, I don't know. I don't love this. Like, this feels more dead zone-y to me than like the typical dead zone, where it's like, these are the sexiest of the zero RB candidates: Rachaad White, James Conner, James Cook. I do have a lot of James Cook here. Not so much Rachaad and James Conner. It just, I don't love that section of the board there.
Have you seen Rachaad White getting a lot of social media, like people talking him down heavily because of, I mean, he was really bad in terms of the avoided tackle rate numbers and rush yards over expectation. I think that was one chart I saw. Might've been Sam Sherman, but it's definitely one of the data guys who tweets a lot of charts out talking about it this week. And I still like Rachaad White. Like, I think he fits a Tampa Bay team that I don't expect to be good this year. But like, people are starting to talk him down to the point that I wouldn't be shocked if he goes closer to 90 at some point soon.
I've seen that sentiment too. He is kind of, he's getting propped up because he's the lead back, right? And there's, if you give zero RB drafters a lead back in the 8th or 9th round, they're gonna pull the trigger on that. And you do have kind of the pass catching out there as well. People are obviously just afraid of the offense. Everyone's afraid of the offense sucking, but I think he's fairly priced. I guess is what I would say on him. And to your point, it does feel like he's maybe going to get a little cheaper here.
And also too, like, teams sucking. I think that's one thing that I've kind of died on this hill a little bit with James Conner, not to the point of like my exposures or anything, but have defended it on the show. Like, running backs on a team that's going to be bad, they're happy to give running backs a bunch of touches there, start to do some check downs more. Like, I think Rachaad White's well positioned. I'll also take Chase Edmonds late just because, there's still a chance, obviously, that Rachaad White just isn't good enough and they decide to go a different direction. But he's a second-year guy who was pretty good in college. So I think Rachaad White will be fine. And ultimately, like, he'll just get more checkdowns and more kind of meaningless touches because of the fact that, like, they're not going to be forcing the ball downfield to try to win, because I don't think they're going to win a lot of games.
Yeah. What do you think about this one? Robert talking about James Conner looks like a value. I actually got one of my first shares of him the other day. I think it was in the Chow Chow though, where he slid around past ADP, and I had some Philly stuff going on. I've joked about that if there was going to be this year's Josh Jacobs, like the guy I never feel like selecting but could smash, that it could potentially be James Conner. But man, could the Cardinals be as competent on offense as the Raiders were last year? I think that's where it falls apart a bit.
You're kind of hoping, I think, the defense is good enough to prop it up then. And, they did hire the Eagles DC, Jonathan Gannon, who's going to come over and hopefully, I think, make that a little bit better on that side of the ball. But I think Connor's a perfectly fine player because, again, it's just going to be a team that, like, Colt McCoy can't get that ball outside. He had a couple starts last year and just was nothing going for him, obviously, downfield. It just kind of happens as guys get older. And also if they're just career backups too. So, like, I don't think he'll be able to get the ball to Marquise Brown in advantageous spots. Maybe Rondale Moore he can, maybe Ertz / Trey McBride he can. But I think that just comes down to James Conner. The issue is, like, with week 17 stuff, is Conner still going in week 17 if they're not going anywhere? Because then it feels like you probably tried out Keontae Ingram, and Conner, like, don't hurt your 30-something-year-old back.
Love watching V Stacks timeout and draft an unstacked Dak Prescott. Let's just keep hammering Zach Charbonnet here at 24%. Got a little Seattle bet going here, starting off with 2 rookie running backs. We need to recap our teams. We have been not servicing the audio listeners here.
It was a holiday, but you can recap yours first. I'm taking A-Chain here.
Yeah, so I'm at a 2-6-1, no quarterbacks. I got Jahmyr Gibbs, Zach Charbonnet at running backs, wide receivers, Devonta Smith, Deebo Samuel, JSN, Diontae Johnson, Brandon Cooks, Courtland Sutton, Travis Kelce at tight end.
And I'm at Justin Herbert at QB unstacked, but I do have some week 17 bringbacks, including Javonte Williams at running back, Devin Achane as well, wide receiver, Devontae Adams, Jalen Waddle, Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, and Zay Flowers. And at tight end, the inglorious Kyle Pitts is back in my life. And this might be one of few exposures I have of Kyle Pitts in BBM.
Really?
Yeah,
I'm surprised. You're out on him altogether?
I loved him last year. I just don't want to go out of my way to get him. So today it worked, but in general, like I just don't think there's going to be enough volume there. And I saw Eagles, of course, one of the best ball guys, who's hammering every tournament out there and is generally pretty sharp about just getting a lot of entries and trying to make them plus EV. But I just don't think that team is going to be high pass volume, and I don't think it could sustain Pitts, Mac Hollins, and Drake London. So I don't know. I am going to take. You know what? I'm actually going to take Alan Lazard here because I never take him, and do you think this would be an okay receiver to pair with my Amari Cooper?
Let's see here. I am going to be taking another running back. AJ Dillon is the running back value, but I have a little bit of a Philly bet going on right now with Devonta Smith. Let's do Rachaad Penny here.
Yeah, I like Rachaad Penny in any sort of build, but yeah, if you have the bet on Philly, certainly a nice one. And I was thinking about a little bit of Penny there too, just because he's getting cheaper, and I don't think the gap between him and Swift should be quite as big as it still is.
Yeah, and I guess I don't think about this stuff a ton, but one thing I think about when I am doing zero RB builds are the type of running back production I'm getting. And as much as I like Gibbs and Zach Charbonnet, they could be slower to produce out of the gate, whether it's, Montgomery and Walker just having bigger roles right away. So then I start to think, who are kind of some of the running backs that I could feather in with them that are going to give me production right out of the gate? And who better than a healthy Rachaad Penny to rely on until he gets hurt. And then maybe these guys kind of assume a bigger role. So I do start to think about that when I'm super heavy on rookies, because I have had zero RB rooms where it's like Gibbs, Charbonnet, Kendre Miller, Roschon Johnson. Then it's like, I'm going to need a couple guys here who are going to be touching the ball right out of the gate.
Yeah, that's something that I definitely ran into as an issue last year. And even some of the good teams I had one zero RB team where I hit on Walker, Pierce, all the guys who were obviously Algier, who I had pretty much every lineup last year. But definitely was a team where it was pretty thin in the beginning and then was kind of sneaking into the playoffs. It's an important thing to remember here where I love the rookies. I have a lot of faith in the rookies in general, pretty much every position. But like Pete's talking about, especially at running back, you have to get some 10-point weeks in that first couple parts of the season where even Algier, who was good last year, he missed like week 1, barely played week 2. So that does happen a lot early.
Let's see here. We are through 10 rounds here. I'm trying to see if we have any other interesting builds going on. Batch, is this our guy Batch with the
yeah, he's been in every room since his faux pas of auto drafting 8 straight running backs the other week.
I mean, he's back on his bullshit. Nick Chubb, Derrick Henry, Kenneth Walker, Dameon Pierce. That is like the most boomer running back room you could draft. He's not going to be rehabilitating his RB loving image with those selections.
So here's a question, Pete, because I know you sometimes do this on your solo streams. He took Tyreek first, so he did take a receiver, then took 4 running backs. If you took those 4 running backs there, and let's say this team is salvageable, then you just wouldn't take another running back the rest of the draft?
Sorry, for him?
Yeah.
I would have. So if I go Chubb, Henry, Walker, to me, that's a 4 running back build for me. And I'm taking that 4th running back like well after round 10 or 11,
Yeah, I agree.
Let's see here. So have started to get a little shut out at quarterback. We do have Gibbs though. I think Goff and Gibbs are kind of a fun little correlation there, and I don't want to push QB too late. So we're going to go ahead and grab Goff. We got the Goff to Gibbs with the Brandon Cooks bring back there.
All right. I am on the clock here, and this is another suboptimal pocket of the draft for me. Don't want to take a tight end at this point. Khalil Herbert just falls enough to make me want to take him, and I'm going to do that here for A little correlation with Kyle Pitts. If you can't stack your QB, correlate your tight end with your week 17 opponent.
There you go.
All right. And then, of course, another delicious Chicago running back going to be left on the board for me here. No Jamal Williams ever at this point. Yeah. I think I'll take Jerick McKinnon, get one more running back.
All right. What am I going to do here? I'm still probably going to be at a 2 QB build, or a 3 QB build regardless. I will go ahead and grab Russ here. A couple picks at past ADP. I do have Sutton. Obviously, lots of backdoor options available. Just making sure there's nothing egregious I'm passing up at running back here with this 0 RB room. I think I'm fine. We'll grab Russ.
Yeah, Russ was a player that I may have taken if I didn't take Herbert. It sucks. It's one of those things where if I didn't take Herbert, I would have gotten one receiver, even if it wasn't one that I didn't like, and I would have been a little more fluid with who to take here. But instead, I am locked in on taking shitty Chargers and one other QB of unknown origin at some point.
Couple questions in the chat here. IO, if you weren't doing the 150 stream drafts, do you think in an average year you'd have more or less than the 30 you've done so far? Good question. I think I'd honestly be about at this where I'm at now. Maybe a smidge more. Maybe I would have done a few more where I would have gotten itchy, in those lulls between some of the other tournaments. I would have fired a couple more. But I honestly think this is about where I'd be. Even if I wasn't doing content, I like the idea of drafting throughout the year. Like, I think there's pros and cons to drafting at most times. And I'm not like a barbell bro or whatever. I like kind of drafting throughout with those specific windows. And then one other question here from William. We hate to see unstacked QBs. Is the Denver bringback for Herbert strong enough, or will you need to prioritize late round QB stacks to gain leverage on stacked up Herbert owners? How are you thinking about that right now, Spags?
I mean, I think I would certainly like to get some other, lower priority Chargers in the mix, though I do think there's probably a lot of Everett floating around with Herbert, so I don't think I'm getting a big advantage there. But I think, for the week 17 part of it, I obviously want to stack on my QB every time if I can. But for the most part, like in terms of pure tournament brain, if Herbert's okay, like I just make it tougher to kind of get the parlay right. But then for the week 17 part, like I think I'm still well positioned because of the amount of Denver bringbacks I have. So I don't mind how this would look, even if I didn't get another Charger, but I think you just want to get those Everett weeks where Herbert goes off. So I will probably try to take Everett as long as he doesn't get sniped.
This also falls into the territory of like the sexiest screenshot, right? Like the sexiest draft screenshot, you're always going to have a double stack with your quarterback, a bring back, blah, blah, blah. But think about it this way. If you could get 18th round unstacked Justin Herbert, would you make that selection? If you knew every single draft however you want, but you can get an unstacked Justin Herbert with your 18th round pick, you would take that every single time, right? Because the value there would supersede whatever benefits you got from stacking other quarterbacks at value. And so if you then think about that on a logical, line, stacking is a boost. It's a bonus that we like going after. So is ADP value. They are almost similar boosts. Getting ADP value versus getting the stack. Ideally, we get both, but we can't always have that. But you're not crossing guys off your board just because you're not getting the stacking boost, specifically if you're getting the ADP value boost. So I think it's not as sexy, it's not as fun, but you should still be taking those quarterbacks when they're at extreme values.
Yeah, I would agree. And honestly, that's the issue I have with Herbert is that I took him at 58 and he has a 53 ADP. Like, was that an extreme enough value for me to kind of have to work backwards into a stack and all that? I would say probably not in hindsight. But that said, in terms of just the week 17 part of it, like Pete mentioned, the sexy part would be getting Herbert with one of Allen and Williams and then probably Quentin Johnston. So ultimately I'm getting different from all those guys, but that means that I need Zay Flowers to beat out Quentin Johnston. I need Amari Cooper to beat out both the Chargers alpha dogs there. So thinner probability, but still I think a team that could be good if it gets there.
I'm going to keep my rookie running back love going. And, this is kind of some of the thinking that I start to do a little bit more as the draft season progresses. And I know Spags likes to jokingly talk about leveraging other picks, but I specifically passed on an ETN value to grab Jahmyr Gibbs. And if you're making a bet against Travis Etienne, I like the idea of taking Tank Bigsby, the guy I think could be one of the biggest beneficiaries if Travis Etienne doesn't pay off his draft cost.
And I just like the idea of taking Tyler Algier here because I also have Miami running back, so Mostert does nothing for me. I have a Chicago running back, so Foreman does nothing for me. So it was the right choice, but also a choice that works out well and pairs with Kyle Pitts. And maybe I'll get Desmond Ridder as my QB2 later on.
Brandon brings up the good question. Obviously, there's never going to be a one size fits all thing. Brandon says, how much of an ADP value do you need to draft a QB you can't stack? So the one thing I would say is I think about it on a sliding scale. So obviously, say the round 2 running quarterbacks, I don't need them to fall 2 rounds and one. Josh Allen's never falling 2 rounds, right? Like if Josh Allen falls 8 picks, I'm probably going to make that. As you go further in the draft, I need like more of a value. Like there was the draft where I took Kyler Murray like 60 picks past ADP because he had slid so much. And so the further you get along, I think you want the guy to slide even more. That's really probably the best way I can say it, but it's also based on your team composition, right? Like Spags didn't have a quarterback yet. He liked what that did for your construction. I think what I'm going to do, because I'm running out of Jared Goff stack options, I like the idea of getting a LaPorta share here. Feel like he pairs well with Kelsey, and gets me now 2 stacking options with Jared Goff and with Gibbs and LaPorta.
See, I think what you're doing here with Goff is the more appealing version of what I'm trying to do with Herbert, where I'm going to take an ugly Charger stack. You're still taking an appealing Lion stack. It's just not the most common because people are probably going to take one of Amon-Ra or Jameson Williams or somebody like that. So I think you going Gibbs and LaPorta is actually a pretty unique way to attack Jared Goff. So I think that's a smart move.
Yeah, and I've heard, a lot of people, LaPorta, I've heard some debate that I think I've agreed with, the Kincaid versus LaPorta ADP. Like those guys' ADP should probably be the same. And it should probably mean that Kincaid is going closer to where LaPorta is going. Sure, maybe you want to give him a round higher just because you're getting a Bills premium or whatever. But they do feel like similar bets in that regard. And I think you can argue LaPorta even has a cleaner path to targets than Kincaid.
Yeah, I mean, they clearly wanted to use the Titans. That was something, too, that jumped out with some of the numbers. Like the guys who were there at tight end for Detroit last year, James Mitchell and who's Brock Wright, like were both really good, like per catch in a way that obviously those guys aren't unique talents or anything. So you kind of have to assume that that's part of the offense. And LaPorta was so good in college that if he's just as productive as these guys, or at least gets the volume of those guys, maybe a slight increase, like he could pay off by just those 2 guys rolling into one role. So I think LaPorta, I'm with you. Like I love Kincaid, but I think Kincaid's gotten steamed up a little bit too much, whereas LaPorta at least should be in the Irv Smith range. If not, like I would take him over Cole Kmet in some builds.
Yeah. Yeah. If the build makes sense, I think it is the constant struggle of, there is, I guess this is the best way I would think about it. I think there's a pretty big opportunity cost to where Dalton Kincaid is going, the kind of talents that you're passing up on in that range. Whereas once you're getting in the 14th to 15th round range and you're looking around at Rashid Shaheed and Curtis Samuel and, Chase Brown, where I'm like, I just don't feel the opportunity cost there quite as much. And that's really my only kind of knock on Kincaid is he is going in a range where you're capturing a lot of the end of the tier 2 quarterbacks, a lot of the prime 0 RB running backs, all of the last potential wide receivers with upside. And so it's a little tougher click when the back end of the draft is just filled with viable tight ends. Michael Mayer is going there if you want your rookie love. We already mentioned LaPorta. You got all the second year guys. Trey McBride should be getting a bump, by the way, with Hopkins out there. Like he's another guy who should benefit with some added targets. So that's why Kincaid's such a tough click, is because you're paying such a premium at a position that the cupboard is full of tight ends down the stretch.
Okay, so follow me with this logic. Would you say that it's almost with where Kincaid's going that he makes more sense if he's your tight end 1, because the bet you're making is that this ADP is not only correct, but he's such an outlier that he's going to make it worthwhile? Because I think that sorts of like makes sense for me. But I agree. Like I think it is a tough window of opportunity if he's just going to be like okay, like these other rookies are going to be. Yeah,
no, I agree. Like if it's same thing with Anthony Richardson. Like if you're taking him, you are playing him as like an elite bet for your team. So I would want to be taking Kincaid and assuming he's just has like a historically great year and he's underpriced.
What does he have to be? Does he have to be just like rookie year Kyle Pitts to be that? Like 1,000 yards?
I think so.
Yeah.
Maybe obviously a few more touchdowns, right? In that Bills offense than Kyle Pitts had. All right, this looks like a sweet spot for me to draft a running back again. Man, I have so much Jeff Wilson, but I am going to take this Diontae Foreman discount here, almost 15 picks past ADP. Another guy, I think, similar to Penny, who pairs very well with this rookie heavy running back room where Diontae Foreman feel pretty confident he's going to have a role right out of the gate, going to be on the field, going to get some goal line carries. So I think he meshes well with Gibbs, Charbonnet, and Bigsby.
There's not a lot I love on the board right now. I guess I could save a running back spot to increase my Chargers, but I am going to take Jerome Ford here, I think. Nope, I timed down and took Josh Palmer. I couldn't let Josh Palmer slip by, Pete. That was entirely intentional here.
I was going to say Jerome Ford's one of the steamiest guys on the draft board. I noticed he's one of the big ADP risers this past week.
He is, and we were early on him, so I feel good about my Ford shares already because he has been like my 18th round guy in a lot of builds, but I think he's still appealing at 183. The issue is now Ford. Like Ford's gone up 12 picks or something like that.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't like that chat.
That never happens in my rooms.
Nor should it.
The Jerome Ford stuff, what's so interesting to me is, again, nothing has actually changed, right? I mean, nothing has changed. It's just people are now realizing that he's the backup to Nick Chubb. Is that what happened? I'm just trying to think why that's different.
Yeah, I guess that would be the only thing. I think it's honestly just that people didn't have that confirmation until he was running with the first team and rookie camp, or OTAs rather. So I think that's sort of what the thing is. But it's something we talked about where people just don't buy in on the logical assumption, which is why I don't assume that people are buying in on Hopkins getting a good location. I think it was just that they were like, yeah, he's great as the wide receiver one in Atlanta. And I think that's what they saw Ford as, like, oh, he's not even the backup. And then he's running with first without Nick Chubb. And now like, oh, I guess he does have a role.
Right.
Which I hate. I hate that logic for it. Like, read the tea leaves a little more.
So I'm surprised, Spags, you said you were considering Jerome Ford or Josh Palmer, but then you took Hunter Renfrow coming back. I assumed you would have just grabbed your guy, Jerome Ford.
Well, I kind of realized that I need to get a bet in at QB because there's only 3 rounds left, or now only 2 rounds left. So I think I'm actually going to go with a 2 QB build behind Herbert because I did not get the stacks. But also I want to keep the flexibility because I'm not sure yet. I feel comfortable running with Jimmy Garoppolo as my QB2, but I don't know that I should. So I'm kind of going to go down to the wire here if I take Ritter and Garoppolo, or if I take, I guess, Spiller and Garoppolo or Ritter.
So yeah, when did that news break? Was that Friday, the stuff about Jimmy Garoppolo failing his physical, and he's essentially now getting paid far less than what his initial contract suggested? And it's basically like, prove it. Like, you have to prove that you're healthy enough to play. So now people are spooked. I've seen Devontae Adams sliding a couple spots in drafts. And I guess I don't know if I formulated a hot take on this, but you're saying that you think it's kind of just noise and that Garoppolo is going to be fine.
I tend to think it's noise for me. I don't think it's noise in terms of the ADP. Like, I think he's going to fall pretty meaningfully. So that's why I'm willing to take him if he's there late, but probably not going to go out of my way and take him like in the 180s at this point, close to ADP. Yeah, I think, Jimmy, they go away of him if he's not healthy by camp. I mean, he took the contract to make a bet on himself. And I think that's still the way like their team construction goes as well. Like, they have Brian Hoyer and Aiden O'Connell behind him. Aiden O'Connell wasn't even that great in college, so it's hard to expect him to be great day one. He's a veteran guy though, or like a veteran college guy. So maybe he can have a little more upside as a backup, but they don't have a contingent plan. So like, they need Garoppolo to be ready to go too, or else that whole house of cards is going to fall, including Devontae Adams, who's already unhappy.
That's what I was going to say. Do we know the timeline on when did the Raiders know this? Like, when did he fail his physical? Because they went into the draft and they weren't, aggressive with kind of maneuvering or finding. Like, they still seem like pretty content, going in with Jimmy Garoppolo. They were never, it didn't seem like ever seriously in the Rodgers sweepstakes, but despite like the Devontae Adams connection. I guess what I'm saying is hasn't seemed to be a whole ton of urgency for the Raiders with regard to their quarterback situation. So if they are worried about Jimmy G, they sure haven't shown it with their actions.
Yeah, I don't think they are nervous with it. I think they saw value, and I think that's the main thing. But the public's going to be nervous about it. So I think that's where there kind of runs and loggerheads a little bit, where I'm willing to take Jimmy G, but I think Jimmy G is going to go undrafted in a lot of teams, even if they have Devontae Adams, even if they have Josh Jacobs. So that's my bet right now, but I think he'll be out there and going just because like he's either out there going or this is the end of Jimmy G's career, basically, because he's been hurt so many times now.
Oh, I'm laughing at my quarterback situation here because Brock Purdy would make sense as a third quarterback, but I would literally have 3 week 9 buys, which just seems absurd. Let's see here.
Great way to flout the people who would taunt you on social media, though, is 3 QB bye weeks the same week.
I know, exactly. I think we're just going to have to get one of my favorites unless I'm missing any stacks here. Do I get a little Sam Howell action here? All right. Unstack Sam Howell. Let's see. And wide receiver, what could we do here? What do you go Ritter?
I'm taking Ritter here, and I'm going to decide last minute if I go with Garoppolo or if I go with one of the running backs from the Chargers who's a backup.
So I'm at a 3.662, done at tight end, done at quarterback. I haven't taken a wide receiver since pick 88. Probably get to a 7th wide receiver or a 7 running back here. I think either would be fine.
Yeah, I'm at a 2.582, so I think I have my lean, but let's find out here. And also, a lot of people watching live. Don't forget, guys, this is a double header stream. The second half of the stream will be on the Splash Play channel, so check that out. And of course, if you're not subscribed to the Peach channel, make sure to do that. He is on his march to 15,000 subs, giving away $1,500 to 3 different people. So $500 each to those folks if you leave a comment. Of course, every comment on Pete's videos counts as an entry, so support him here. I hope that was an adequate plug, Pete, because I think I misspoke one of the times. Somebody accused me of saying you're giving away $1,500 to one person.
Yeah, Spags thought I was giving away $4,500.
It just keeps growing. It keeps growing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, some people getting comment fatigue, but as Spags mentioned, every single show that I draft on, including this one and the one directly following over on the Splash Play channel, those are eligible for the comment giveaway here. Someone said, Mike says, unstacked Hal there is gross. Well, newsflash, any quarterback I took would have been unstacked there. I do not have any more stacking options available. I am going to go ahead and get my double stack with Russell Wilson, and we'll grab Tim Patrick as my 7th and final wide receiver here.
It's going to be hard for you to compete, Pete, with my Justin Herbert, Isaiah Spiller, Gerald Everett, Josh Palmer reach stack for the Chargers in week 17. That's going to be the one that really does everybody in.
There you go. Here you go, Chris. Sure, I'll do this. If I get to 45,000 YouTube subs, I will do $1,500 to 3 people each. That is my promise to you.
Wait, that would be crazy if you just hit 30,000 subs overnight.
I think I would have to. If I started doing like 8-hour marathon streams every day, I probably could. But then my entire life would fall apart.
So how bad do you want those subs, Pete? That's the question.
Not bad enough. Not bad enough.
Do you want to give a final reading of the teams?
Sure. Let's do it here. All right. So, and again, I know we have mentioned this a few times, but directly following this, we are drafting another team on the Splash Play channel. I have the link in the show description. Also, it should just auto refresh. I have the redirect here. So if you just stay put, you should immediately be ported over to the Splash Play channel for draft number 2, my 31st Best Ball Mania draft. But this one is in the books. Another 3 quarterback build for Pete. The Dak Prescott auto draft snipe definitely hurt. That was probably the one time this entire draft I was tilting. My quarterbacks, though, are Jared Goff, Russell Wilson, and Sam Howell. Got a classic 0 RB room here. Some might quibble and say Jahmyr Gibbs, more of a modified anchor RB. I'll let you guys debate that in the comments. Jahmyr Gibbs, Zach Charbonnet, Rashad Penny, Tank Bigsby, Diontae Foreman, Chuba Hubbard there. Fun 0 RB room. Wide receivers, Devonta Smith, Deebo Samuel, JSN, Deontay Johnson, Brandon Cooks, Cortland Sutton, and Tim Patrick. And then tight ends, Travis Kelce and Sam LaPorta. So I got the double stack with Goff and the double stack with Russ and an unstacked Sam Howell, much to the chagrin of the chat. What did you end up with, Spags?
At QB, Justin Herbert is a value, Desmond Ritter, running back, Javonte Williams, Devin Achane, Khalil Herbert, Jerick McKinnon, Tyler Algier, and Isaiah Spiller, which is why I needed that extra running back. Devontae Adams, Jalen Waddle, Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, Zay Flowers, Alan Lazard, Josh Palmer, and Hunter Renfrow at receiver. And at tight end, Kyle Pitts and Gerald Everett. This is a real working man's team, is what I'd say. Working class, blue collar, a lunch pail kind of team.
Yeah, my only, if I'm going to, pick nits at your team, irrespective of like ADP or player take stuff, just structurally, I feel like I want either a 7th running back or a 3rd quarterback instead of the 8th wide receiver when you used so many early picks at wide receiver. That would be my only thing.
Yeah, I think you're right. I took Renfrow mostly because I was trying to keep the optionality open, but sometimes that optionality can kind of hurt your team if you don't take a stand and try to make the team like you're correct. That's what we've talked about a lot on here. What's the closing words, Pete? So we can go hop over to the Splash Play channel and do one more draft today here on this post-Memorial Day Tuesday.
The final words here are we are streaming all these drafts. Spags has been streaming over on Splash Play on Fridays. Make sure you guys are subscribed to both this channel and the Splash Play channel. I will be doing Best Ball Breakfast tomorrow with Pat Crane in the first draft, defending Best Ball Mania 3 champ, and then Sean Siegel from Rotoviz in the second draft. So you guys can tune in for that. But come follow us over to Splash Play, Spags.
It'll be a lot of fun on there. The second hour is, in fact, the tilting hour. Pretty much no matter when we're drafting, whether it's together or apart, that second hour gets ugly. So go over at Splash Play Pod, go check it out, or stay here on the channel, and it'll redirect. We'll see you guys over there in about a minute.